Hi guys. Today we're going to do another practice for the Duolingo English Test. I'm going to give you some practice passages, but first I'm going to give you a couple of tips and strategies for answering these questions. All right, tip number 1. The first thing you should look for in the passage is keywords. Scan it quickly and identify the subject. This will help you think about vocabulary you already know related to this topic. This is similar to when you were in school and your English teacher gave you a passage to read. They often give you preview questions. This is to help you think about vocabulary you already know. Tip number 2, look for verbs. What tense is this passage in? If you can identify the verb tense, this helps you know what to look for in the passage. Do you need to look for ed endings? Do you need helping verbs? It's very useful, so I suggest identifying the passage tense right away. Tip number 3, once you've done that, go through quickly and fill in the letters that you know. Some words are going to jump out to you fast. Go ahead and start with those words. Now, once you've done that, go back and read the passage a little more carefully and think about the words. Words are going to come to you. Don't get stuck in one spot. Just keep reading, and each time you read the passage, more words are going to come to you. Now, if the problem is that you have a word that you feel fits in this sentence, but you have too many blanks or not enough, check the word form. Maybe you're using a noun and you need an adjective. So think about word form. It's very important to remember to actually submit your answers before that timer runs out. If you're running out of time and you have a couple of blanks, that's okay. And if your question is very hard, it may mean that you're doing a really good job. This test is adaptive. This means if you're answering your questions correctly, they're going to give you hard questions. They're going to keep going harder and harder and harder. So getting a difficult question means that you've done pretty well so far. So don't lose your confidence because you come to a question that's difficult. This question tests a lot of skills. You need to be able to recognize vocabulary words. You need to be able to spell those vocabulary words to make them fit in the passage. You need to be able to think in English. You need to be able to use the correct grammar structure. I think the hardest is the reasoning and thinking in English. To be able to put all of these skills together and figure out missing letters, it's a very difficult critical thinking skill. And if you can do that, that means your English is really good. You're getting there. So don't lose confidence. How can you prepare for this test? How do you study for it? Well, I suggest reading a lot of different things. I've seen practice passages come from news articles. I've seen them come from biographies of people. I've even seen questions from famous quotations. So the more you read in English, the better prepared you're going to be. But also think about what you're reading. The more you think in English and think about what you've read, the better you're going to be prepared. All right. So as for practice, let's do some practice passages. There are 3 sample passages, but I've only given a 10-second break for the passage. So please pause the video to allow yourself time to answer the questions. I do give you the answers to all of the passages at the end, but please note I do go through and explain the blank places. So if you only want to read the answers, just skip ahead and pause the video so you can check your answers. All right, let's take a look at the answers. Fiat brand cars are built in several factories around the world. Outside Italy, the largest country of production is Brazil, where the Fiat brand is the market leader. There are also factories in Argentina, Poland, and Mexico. Okay, let's take a look at some of the examples in this passage. If you began by noticing that the tense of this passage is in the present tense, that gives you a few clues right away. I see are. When I see the word factories in the first sentence, I think of what happens in factories. You build things in factories. And so I look for my past participle for build, and I think of built. My clue for world is all the country names that are in this passage. Largest is a superlative form. Superlatives always have the. Production is a noun form of to produce, which also means to make something. So in my theme of factories, that word came into my mind. Brazil also came into my mind quickly as a country name. I knew to go for countries because we're talking about places. It says country of production and BRA. To my mind, Brazil was pretty easy to identify. Brand is repeated. So you see brand in the first sentence. It's also repeated here. The word also. We're talking about countries of production. We've listed 2 countries, and now we're saying that there are more countries, more factories where countries are located. So also seems to make sense for that passage. Factories is another repeated word. Okay, let's move to the next example. Originally designed for farmers, modern jeans were made popular by movies in the 1950s. This led to the fabric becoming popular with teenagers. From the 1960s onwards, jeans became common. Nowadays, they are one of the most popular types of specialty trousers in Western culture. Okay, let's analyze the blank places in this passage. So I begin by looking at my tenses. I see some past tense and I see present tense. I also notice that my first sentence is set off with an adverbial phrase as an introductory element. I see originally. I see my first blank spot and I see designed. And I know that it's common to say designed for because we're talking about who is it designed for? It's designed for farmers. Popular. If I read ahead just a little bit, I see the word popular repeated. And so therefore that helps me identify popular in the first blank. This led to the fabric becoming popular with teenagers. I think about movies and I think about people who wear jeans. And that gives me the clue that this is going to be the age group of teenagers, the people who are wearing the jeans. Back to my blank with lead. Movies caused the popularity of jeans. So it's like one thing caused another thing to happen. And another way to say that is one thing leads to another. It's past tense, led. One thing led to another. Movies led to the popularity of jeans. My next blank is actually the word jeans. And since jeans is repeated in this passage, that's one of the first words that will come into my mind. The last sentence, remember in the beginning we said there was an adverbial phrase? Well, I see a place for another adverb. Nowadays is an adverb. Types of specialty trousers. Well, jeans are a type of trousers or a type of pants. And so types comes into my mind because we're thinking of different styles of clothing, styles of pants. Another way to say that is types. And then jeans are a very Western clothing item. So that comes into my mind as well. Okay, our next example. Deadwood is a historic town in South Dakota. It was established because gold was found in the area. People moved there to make their fortune. Deadwood is named after the dead trees in the area. When the gold rush ended, people stayed there to work in a local mine. Today, a lot of tourists visit the town to learn about the past. Okay, so this town name is a little bit strange, but I see in South Dakota, and I'm familiar with the states, and I know that South Dakota is a state. If you're not familiar with state names, I recommend that you look those up and become familiar with at least the names so that you'll recognize it in a passage. So what is in a state is a town. Towns and cities are located in states. So town came into my mind. When a town is created, we say it is established. So the word town made me think of established. Gold. You know that people look for gold. So gold was found. Again, one of the first things you should do is look at your tense, and that will help you figure out that we're talking about something from the past and its relationship to today. People moved there to make their fortune. So here we're testing your grammar a little bit. We have the adverb there, and we also have the possessive there. So can you distinguish between the two? And can you spell them correctly? Deadwood is named after dead trees. Well, trees are wood, so hopefully you can figure out that trees would be the original source for this name. Gold has been repeated a couple of times in the passage. Gold rush is something that's famous, so you've probably heard of the gold rush. And at some point, this period in history ended. So just because this event ended, the gold rush ended, people did not move away from the town. They stayed in the town. Who visits historical towns? Well, tourists like to visit historical towns. And historical means that we are dealing with the past. And so that last word, past, makes sense in relation to the topic sentence, historic and past. All right. I hope this video has been helpful for you. Let me know in the comments how you did with these examples, and I will create another video soon.